Hi everybody, it's Jody Peel, Executive Director of Third Space Charity. Welcome to our show. We've launched a show to respond in new and collaborative ways to support our community during this unprecedented time. I'm going to turn off a setting here before I get going. And I can't do two things at once. There we go. So just wanted to let you know that this is the pre-show. We'll be starting in a few minutes. I wanted to let you know that we're going to be posting all of these shows on our YouTube channel soon. We're just working out some technical issues and doing some editing, so that'll be up soon. If you sign up for our newsletter on the website, thirdspacecanada.org, or follow us on Facebook or Instagram, we'll let you know when it's ready. Or you can just keep watching and it'll be there soon. In a few minutes, I will be introducing our guest today, Allison McLauchlan from Kelowna Women's Shelter. But before I begin, as always, I want to thank Third Space Coffee, located in the Landmark District in Kelowna, British Columbia, which is a social enterprise that supports our charity. Thank you so much to Lonnie and his team for doing everything, all that they do all the time, and for making the best coffee in town and offering everybody some nutritious and delicious food. You can order online at thirdspacecoffee.ca. Also, I do a gratitude practice before each show. And today, I'm thanking you. This occurred to me this morning when I was sitting on my back deck having coffee, listening to the birds chirping and feeling really emotional about the topic today and nervous. And I just wanted to let you know that we appreciate you bearing with us through this growth phase of this show. This is new to me, new to all of us, and we're doing our best to try to figure it out and do a good job for you. Greg, who is our in-house creative genius, is working hard to try all different things to make this as impactful as possible and to meet your needs. And so keep those ideas and suggestions and feedback coming. We're trying different styles, different formats, we're actually going to be trying some new media as well, doing some pre-recorded Zoom shows. So thank you for bearing with us. It's funny how my personality is such is that I'm just naturally fascinated, and always have been, by people and their stories and the human condition and the human experience. Yet you put me in front of a camera and it feels different and it's uncomfortable. So my husband actually said that to me this morning in a kind and loving way, that you don't seem like you yet in front of the camera. So that's coming too. I'm working on that, and thank you for bearing with me as I get over my stage fright. It's good to know that some of you are giving us feedback that we're doing a lot of things right. We're hearing that you love the topics. We're hearing that the guests are amazing, which they are. So stay tuned for more shows with amazing topics and amazing guests, and a little bit better hosting and formatting. So thank you once again. So for those of you, it's 12:01. Those of you joining us right now, hi, this is Third Space Live. I'm Jody Peel, Executive Director at Third Space Charity here in Kelowna, British Columbia. This show offers conversations, ideas, and stories to build mental wellness and hope. You can learn all about our charity and what we do at thirdspaceCharity.ca. Today's April 16th, and this is show number 7. Today we're going to be talking about domestic violence. And although we're trying lately to keep our shows shorter, 20 to 30 minutes, I don't think this is one of those topics that's going to be able to be addressed in any way that shortly. So it's going to go a bit longer today. And like I said earlier, I've been feeling emotional and stressed out about this show today because it's a tough topic. So I wanted to share some thoughts with you before I introduce the guest, Allison. And I wanted to let you know and give you permission to sit with me in the fact that I don't know a lot about this subject. I've been really lucky that I haven't had to face it myself personally or in my family. And I've read up a lot on this subject as much as I could to try to have meaningful dialogue with Allison. One of the articles I read that was really impactful was from April 8th in the Huffington Post, and I'll share the link after the show. And these are some of the points that I took from that to set the stage here today. right now, I mean, domestic violence is always an issue in every society, but with the self-isolation happening and people being stuck in their homes, this is increasing domestic violence globally right now. And I also thought it was really important to remind everybody that domestic violence involves children as well, and it doesn't just happen between men abusing women. It can happen the other way around, and it can happen with same gender relationships. So let's make sure you remind yourself to keep your mind open to all the different ways this presents today. So domestic violence reports globally are surging. Apparently, isolation is the biggest tool that abusers, not in a COVID world, but the abusers use all the time to control their victims. And right now, this isolation is being handed to them on a silver platter. Also, this is combined with increased financial pressure, people losing jobs, maybe people using more substance abuse or using more substances to cope. So everything's being intensified, and it's a pressure cooker right now. It was also interesting that the article talked about domestic violence rates being the canary in the coal mine that measures all social issues. And I think that's really interesting and compelling. Some stats, up to 35% of women have experienced violence in their lives, but this also often goes unreported. And 1 in every 4 violent crimes are reported to police, and 70% of intimate partner violence, which is something we're talking about today, and I didn't understand what that meant until I talked to Allison to prepare for the show. So 70% of intimate partner violence don't involve police. So why some organizations and authorities recommend using 911, making that call when someone's in danger, and then you hear other organizations like the U.S. Domestic Hotline saying that it actually can exacerbate the violence by involving the police. Confusing. Allison will help us figure that out. Also, governments from all over the world are responding to try to reduce or support this problem that's going on. It's spiking right now with COVID. Canada has announced a $26 million fund to the approximate 575 women's shelters in Canada to try to help. So, wow, right? This is overwhelming. It's sad, it's scary, and it's a big topic. So I now am going to invite our guest to join us. Allison McLauchlan is the executive director of the Kelowna Women's Shelter. I'm going to try to find her on this list. And I don't see her, so, oh, there she is. I'm going to introduce her anyway, so she's going to. And you're going to love listening to Allison because she's Scottish. She's originally from Scotland, where she started her work in the domestic abuse sector. Hi, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Allison worked for Scotland's lead domestic abuse agency, as well as a rural outreach domestic abuse program. She moved to Canada in 2009 and continued to work with women and children experiencing abuse and violence in second stage and emergency shelters in Alberta. She recently moved to Kelowna and took on the role of executive director at the Kelowna Women's Shelter. So you can learn more about the shelter and everything they do by following them at kelownawomensshelter.ca and on Facebook and Instagram. So welcome, Allison. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for putting up with my long-winded intro today.
Oh no, everything you said was perfect, and thank you for having me, and thank you and your viewers for wanting to learn and understand more about the issue. So I really appreciate you asking me to come on the show.
Yeah, and you know what? I anticipate we'll want you back because, like I said, this is a big topic. So let's do our best to at least do some introductory conversation today, and maybe we'll do another one later. Yeah. So I'll let you start with maybe telling us a little bit, maybe developing some literacy around this for us. What is domestic violence? What's the definition? What does it mean? What does it look like? And what are the different kinds? Because that was something we talked about already, and I didn't know any of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, domestic violence, domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, violence against women. At one point, it was even called battered women's issues. It's went through a lot of different terms, which I guess can be confusing for some people. For me, I personally refer to the issue as domestic abuse, and the reason why we do that is that back in Scotland and the UK, they actually changed the word into domestic abuse, because what we were finding and what women were telling us was that that word violence, it's a full stop word, and a lot of women who weren't experiencing the physical side of the issue didn't feel like it was them.
I get it.
If there was no physical abuse, they were like, oh, that's not me, or I can't reach out to the services. And so that's why the decision was made to take the word violence out of it and make it domestic abuse.
Because it's about control and emotional abuse. That's what you're getting.
Yeah. There's so many different types and ways to abuse another human being. So that is why I refer to it as to domestic abuse, but there's so many other definitions out there in the world. And the UNICEF are very clear that it's violence against women and girls is one of the most pervasive violations of human rights across the globe. It's subtle and it's blatant, and its impact on development is overwhelming. So they see it as an all-encompassing human rights violation,
which it is. Yeah,
absolutely, it is, and it's deeply embedded. And this is UNICEF again. It's deeply embedded in the cultures.
Yes.
Across the world.
Yeah.
But once we recognize it for what it is, a construct of power and control, we can dismantle it. And I think that's the key part to UNICEF's definition, is we can dismantle this issue. It's not easy, it's complex, but we can dismantle it. And I think, people always ask me, how can you do what you do? Will we ever end this issue? And I have to say, yes, we can.
Yeah.
We can bring an end to the suffering of women and children across the globe. I have to believe that. Or I don't know how I would get up in the morning if I didn't believe that. So we can dismantle it, but in order to dismantle it, we have to understand it.
Right.
We have to understand it for what it is. Our laws have to be set up to keep women and children safe. And we have to hold the perpetrators of abuse and violence accountable.
Yeah.
You and I spoke about this when I had said that domestic abuse and sexual assault are the only two crimes where the victim is held on some level accountable or responsible. If you have a really, really, really nice car or a really beautiful house with fancy things in it and you get robbed or broken into, the police don't come around and say, well, that's what you get for having a nice car.
Right, gotcha.
Or that's what you get for having nice things. What do you expect? Of course, someone's going to take it. But we know this from the court systems, sexual assault and domestic abuse, it's always, I've heard judges say to women, what did you do to make him so angry? That was a judge.
Hoping that's going to change. As a former lawyer, I know that judges are good people and they want it to end, and the laws are trying to make this happen. But
absolutely,
what I hear you saying is that there's a cultural legacy maybe about blaming women for sexual abuse.
Yes.
By looking beautiful, which is absurd,
yes.
Or being sexual, which is absurd. And then similar for abuse, I imagine where you're going with that is that people are women, anybody who's abused is blamed for staying.
Yes.
And that's something you and I talked a lot about. So we need to learn more about this so we understand how that happens.
Yes. And one of the big questions I always get asked is, well, why doesn't she just leave?
Right.
although we know that women are at most risk when they leave, if we are under the understanding that this is a power and control is at the root of this issue, then when women leave the perpetrator, there's a loss of control.
Okay.
When that situation happens. So the need to regain control becomes heightened when a woman leaves or a person leaves the relationship. And that's when they're at most risk.
Right.
A lot of the news stories, a lot of the femicides from across the world and in Canada, a lot of those occur after the relationship has ended.
Mm-hmm.
That's when women are at most risk. Mm-hmm. So when it's not as simple to say, well, then just leave.
Right.
And women understand that. Women have been threatened. Women have been told for years that if you dare to leave me, I will, burn your parents' house down. I'll kill I'll take every family wipeout was a term that was coined in Wales back in, I believe, the 90s, when a woman did leave with the children and the perpetrator just completely killed the entire family. So family wipeout is a real thing, and women are very aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
We always say women are the best judge of their own safety when it comes to living with domestic abuse. And what that means is they have been surviving this for many, many years. They know when the time is right to leave. They know when it's the safest to leave. They know when it's the safest to push back. They know because they've been surviving it. So for anybody or any agency or anyone to come in and try and steer her in another direction, she will know that's unsafe.
Right. So what we're talking about here, just to weave together what our pre-show talk was all about, we're talking about intimate partner violence right now, right? Because that's a little different than some of the other types of abuse.
Yes. And so Michael P. Johnson wrote a book called The Typologies of Domestic Violence. Mm-hmm. And I really like this book. And for anybody that wants to learn more about the issue, and specifically the issue that I deal with and women's shelters deal with, this is a great book. So Michael P. Johnson, awesome. And he breaks it down into 4 typologies of domestic violence. One of them being coercive control. And that's what the women's shelter, the women's movement, the women's network, that's the specific type that we are talking about, where power and control is at the root of this abuse. Now, anybody can be abused. Anybody can be a victim. Anybody can be a perpetrator. There are women out there that abuse men. We know that. However, what I deal with and what women's shelters deal with is predominantly coercive control, which is normally men against women. Now, the other types that he talks about, and I won't go into great detail because it's complicated, but he talks about violence resistance is another type, and that's the battered women syndrome. That's when we see in the media where a woman's maybe been living with abuse for a lot of years, and then all of a sudden she kills her partner according to what the outside world sees, for no apparent reason. So that's that one. And then we have situational couple violence. That usually occurs when there's an end of the relationship. And that's the perpetrator of that one is normally the person being left. So again,
so it's situational more.
Yeah, situational. Yeah. So there's a situation that's happened that has caused that violent incident. And then there's no, sorry, I'm getting mixed up. That is separation. That's separation violence. That's when someone separates. Situational couple violence is the one where we all know those people who have very volatile relationships, who are equally aggressive to one another, male, female. So that's that one, and then they just go about the relationship. What's the difference? To tie this up in a nice little bow, people will always say to me, well, my partner and I argue all the time.
Yeah.
My partner and I fight all the time and we do this. And I'll say, yeah, that's normal. That's what me and my husband argue as well. When the line crosses, when does it cross from normal relationship to abuse?
Yeah.
And here's how I explain it. When you're arguing with your partner, and you could argue all day, you could call each other names, you could just be awful to one another. There is no element of fear. When you silence someone, when you take away someone's right to say no, when you take away someone's right to express their opinion through fear and intimidation, that's when you've crossed over into abuse. So when you're arguing with your partner all day long, doing all that stuff, nobody's scared to say, nobody's scared in that conflict.
Yeah. You're annoyed and angry, but you're not afraid.
Yeah. You're not afraid. Women will often say that their partner wouldn't even have to say anything to them. They would just have to give them a look. They would just have to give them a look. They would just have to maybe bang their hand on the table. And in that moment, the woman knows, I need to be quiet.
It's not different. It's not any different than having a bully in your home, whether it's when you're growing up or not. You end up walking on eggshells, and you can read subtleties, right? The tone of someone's voice. It's the same idea.
Absolutely. So just the look, and she knows enough. So that person has silenced another human being through fear and intimidation.
Right.
And that's when it's crossed the line. Now, you could get fed up arguing with your partner. My husband gets, just walks away from me. That's not the same thing. He's just decided, I'm not playing this game anymore, but he's not afraid. I haven't taken away his right, and he hasn't taken away my right to reply or say no. Mm-hmm. So that's when we cross, when you just, a simple look and you silence someone.
So understanding that, then, back to why women don't leave. Because I think that's a basic education piece that everybody needs to know that isn't in this space. You and I talked about investment. Yes. I think it was in our pre-show. Yes. That women are invested, and that helped me understand why they don't leave. Tell us all about that.
So often women will say, I don't even know when this started. I don't, I am confused. It was so, because like I said at the description at the beginning with UNICEF, this is subtle. This is a subtle thing. And because it's relationship based, all of the red flags that we talk about are really difficult for women to pick up on. The overprotective at the start of the relationship, wanting to spend every minute with you. But that's what happens in every relationship at the start. We're always like, you hang out first. No, you hang out that.
And you're flattered by it. And you interpret that as an act of love.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as the relationship progresses, in a healthy relationship, that gets less and less. But in an abusive relationship, it continues to increase. But by then you're in a relationship. And when I talk about investment, and I don't know the exact stat, but it was around about 80% women disclosed that the first violent act was during pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that before.
Yes. So during pregnancy was the first time there was a physical assault. Now, there had been other forms of abuse, whether it be verbal, psychological, or emotional, but that was the first physical one. And at that point, you would say, okay, well, I'm ending the relationship. However, when there's a pregnancy, a wedding, a mortgage, something, an investment in a relationship, it's you're more likely to say, oh, that was a one-off.
Yeah.
It won't happen again. And, we're having a baby together, or we're buying a house, or we're getting married. So when a woman has an investment in the relationship, is normally when we see that next step up in the abusive behavior. Now, when I talk about this,
I'm going to stop you for a second there, because just to make sure I'm clear on this.
Yeah.
So investment, the way you're using that word, is something that's makes it much more complicated to leave.
Yes.
Maybe. Or
yes, it could be an emotional investment, a financial investment.
Okay.
So it does make it difficult to walk away.
Yeah.
We become invested in a relationship. I mean, if someone was abusive to you on a first date, first time you met them, and they were abusive to you, they just were verbally or emotionally abusive, you would get up and walk out of that room.
Yeah.
Because you're not invested. You're not emotionally invested.
Gotcha.
Your family's
nothing to lose.
invested.
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah, you've nothing
much easier.
to lose. So you would get up and walk out, but that's not how this works. So yeah, an investment, whether that be emotionally invested, whether the families are invested. If there's going to be a wedding, you're joining families.
There's also that stigma or embarrassment factor too, or
absolutely.
On behalf of other people even.
And let's face it, most abusers, most perpetrators in my world that I deal with and have met are some of the loveliest people you'll ever want to meet.
They can charm.
Oh, they can charm. And so all of a sudden you have everybody saying, this guy is wonderful, what a great catch. Yet you're being abused in your own home, and you're already being told that you're the problem. If you just did this better, if you just did that better. And then it's reinforced by the rest of your world, your family saying, what a great guy. This is the gaslighting effect. This is the mind games that get played, the emotional and psychological abuse that happens.
It's important and for women to understand what we're talking about today, about how it starts and what it looks like, so that you have that literacy around even being able to articulate the problem to a family member or a counselor or something, and saying, wow, I know that this isn't healthy what he's doing, and this is what it looks like, as opposed so that you can respond to those naysayers, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And going back, obviously in my mom's generation, for example, it was really just a case of you stay married.
Yeah.
You just,
or religious pressure.
You just do better. Exactly. The cultural aspect of, you stay married. Roles and responsibilities, women's roles, men's roles, and how different cultures have different ways of using those rules. So we have all that as well to deal with.
You know what? I actually have a personal story about that.
Oh.
I just remembered. My father won't be watching the show, so I can share. His older sister, when he was much younger than her, and when she was newly married, her new husband was beating her, and she went home to the family home, talked to her mother, and her mother told her to go back.
Yes.
Because it's your duty to go back and stay married. So there's a good example. Now my dad's in his 80s, so his sister would be close to 90. So that's a different generation.
Absolutely.
But and my dad's parents were loving, kind people, and that was still the advice she got.
Yes, absolutely. Again, because it's all rooted in culture and laws and
economic risk too, right? I mean, women.
Absolutely. Financial abuse. When we talk about the types of abuse, there's obviously everybody, the media, the movies, always focus on the physical.
Yeah.
The bruises, the broken bones. Yet we find that the physical abuse is maybe the third or fourth type of abuse used on a daily basis. And that sounds really callous. But what I mean by that is psychological abuse is the top one used. And then it goes to emotional and verbal.
What's the difference between psychological and emotional?
Psychological and emotional are tightly tied together. However, the psychological is more of those mind games. It's more of the gaslighting. The emotional abuse is is more of that blatant, in your face, name
telling you
calling.
you're worthless.
Yes. Whereas the psychological is more of that, is that subtle game playing. Here's an example. I supported a woman once, and this one stuck with me. And it stuck with me because she finally got it. And I love those light bulb moments. They really make my day. So she had lived with an emotional abuser, a psychological abuser, for many years. And it wasn't until after she'd left him that she realized that she could open jars of food, or she, and then, so she said, one day I just went round the house, and when she was on her own, and she opened all the jars, and she had a moment where she realized that he had been going around tightening everything. And so she would always have to go with him and say, can you help me open this? And he would use those opportunities to tell her she was weak. There's no way she could survive on her own. What would she do without him? He intentionally went around tightening everything in the home. Wow. So that's the psychological part. So when she realized, oh my God,
I don't need him.
Oh my God, he was doing this. I can, and she went around, if you can imagine her going around her home, opening everything, and then just the realization and the emotion.
It's making me teary. It's like a scene out of the movie.
I know.
So why don't you explain what gaslighting is, though? I know what the term means.
Yes, so that
a lot of people don't.
Yeah, so that is gaslighting. That is making someone think that, you know, that they're the issue. They're the problem. It's like when you move things, or you say something, and then you turn around and say, I didn't say that.
Right. You try to make them feel like they're crazy. That's a bad word to use, but that their interpretation is wrong. That they don't know how to read things properly. They're not. Yeah.
I didn't say that.
Yeah.
You said that. It just immobilizes people. Women will tell us, have told us for many years, you know what? I could handle the black eyes. I can handle the broken bones. I'll heal from them. But the emotional and psychological, that's where the trauma, the mental health, that it lasts a lifetime. Flashbacks are huge when it comes to domestic abuse. We often support women who have been out of the relationship maybe for 10 years. But all of a sudden, like the story with the jars, all of a sudden, when you're in a space where the brain knows you're ready to deal with things, it'll start throwing things back at you. And that's when the flashbacks happen.
So that's PTSD.
Yes. We can support women who have been out of a relationship, an abusive relationship, for a number of years, because the baggage is still there. The trauma is still there. The what the hell was that all about is still there. So we do a lot of work on an outreach basis with women around that, about that knowledge piece, about that understanding piece, about those light bulb moments where, oh, wait, hang on a minute. This was happening to me. I wasn't causing it. It was happening to me. And that's, you know, that's a wonderful part about the work that we do, is, like I said, those light bulb moments when we see that a little bit of the soul come back to life, a little bit of it's not me. I don't deserve this. I'm not to blame for this. I couldn't have stopped it even if I had tried.
So I'm curious about talking a little bit, having said that, about what kind of services are needed when a woman ends up deciding to seek help and accesses a shelter, like the Kelowna Women's Shelter, and then what it looks like. How long is she there? How many times does she come back? And then you just already talked about the fact that there's also aftercare that's needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Possibly throughout her life moving
Yes,
forward?
absolutely. So we know that women will leave on average 7 times before they leave for good. So that, because this is a process, it's not a one-time event, it's a process. So if we think about that as well from a shelter perspective, if we know that women will leave up to 7 times before they leave for good, women can come back to us as many times as they need to. It's never a one stay, oh, you've stayed here, you can't come back. And we celebrate when women come back to us. As strange and upside down as that sounds, we celebrate because we know that we get another opportunity to support her, to rebuild some of that, to give some more of that knowledge. And what we find over those 7 times is the time that she stays gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until she finally leaves for good. So if we've had a woman stay with us 3 times and she comes back, we're like, okay, we're halfway there. We're halfway there.
So what does that look like walking through that journey with her? What is it? Where do you start with someone like that in terms of the supportive services and counseling that you offer them? And how does she graduate through that? What type of stuff is she being taught? And what are you doing to support her while she's there?
So the first step always with anybody is to listen and believe. It's not any more complicated than that. It's listen, believe, do not provide solutions. So we're believing a woman who discloses abuse and violence is key.
So this could be applied to a friend then, if you have a friend that you know that's living in this way. Yeah.
Believe. She's been told for many years that no one will believe her. Mm-hmm. No one will care. That she's the problem. Right. So we believe, we listen, and we believe. We validate. Mm-hmm. And we just be in that moment. Because it's a journey, it depends on what stage she's at. It will depend on the type of support that we will give. Now, there's those basic supports that we give when everybody walks through the door. There's 3 big systems that women get thrown into when they choose to leave. The legal system, okay. The financial system, and often the Ministry of Child and Family Services sometimes. So we have those larger systems at play.
And those 3 systems are so intimidating and complicating.
Absolutely.
Every single one of them on their own.
Absolutely. So we have to work on, okay, so what's the legal part? Is there a legal part? Is there custody? So we need to get that ball rolling. What about finances? Has she been financially abused? Does she have no access to money? Has she not been allowed to work? So then we have to work on that. Okay, so what government funding is there? We need to get that set up. Housing, where's she going to live?
Yeah.
So we have to work on the housing piece. And landlords are very reluctant to rent to women who have experienced domestic abuse or who don't have references. And and let's face it, who have no money.
Yep.
So we have to work through that. And then we have to work through, are the children being used as, are they being weaponized? So we often get, when a woman comes to shelter, for example, we often have the RCMP show up because the partner has made a call to them to say that she is threatening suicide, that she has went missing. So they will show up here, obviously, to do a safety check. They have to, that's their job. So we will often get the police used as weapons as well to intimidate. Yes, it's very manipulative, and thankfully, you know, the police are phenomenal. When they come to the women's shelter, we have a really fantastic relationship with them. But it's scary for women when the police show up. The fear is overwhelming, and it's like, well, I have to return. I have to go back. So
can we touch on the
there's,
kids there for one more second?
yes,
Because that was one of the questions I asked you before when we met, that often women are, one of the ways they're invested and one of the reasons they don't leave is for fear of having to share the children with someone who they don't trust and is worried, or they don't know what, it's overwhelming to think that they're going to leave with no money, with children in tow. So women often show up at the shelter with children.
yes,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah, women will very, very rarely leave their children behind. Mm-hmm. Very rarely will they leave their children behind.
But you can accommodate women with
absolutely.
children, is what
Women
I'm getting
with
at.
children, women with or women without children, absolutely. Children are a huge part of this, and for many years in the 80s and 70s, when the women's shelter movement first got started, we dropped the ball when it came to children in women's shelters. We thought if we could just get everybody out and work with mum, then the little people would be fine. And we realized over the years that we'd made a mistake there, that the trauma that the children and the developmental issues were overwhelming these children, and they had a voice and they had something to say. And this bullying and intimidation was on them too. They were being told to go to school, say nothing. Don't tell anybody what's going on at home. Do not tell anybody. Don't talk to the police. Don't talk to the teachers. Tell nobody. Don't talk to your friends. So children were having to push people away that could have been supportive to them, to keep them at arm's length, to keep everybody safe.
So they were being manipulated.
Absolutely.
By the abuser, but maybe even possibly by the woman,
yes,
because of her fears.
And mum as well. Mum would often be the one telling the kids, don't tell anybody.
Because it'll set them off or something.
Exactly. And then the guilt, imagine the guilt that a woman feels. I mean, the guilt is overwhelming. So kids were experiencing this too. Kids, and especially kids when they were hitting teenage years. We like to label children. And I think we can all remember the labels we had at school. We like to label children. So children who were experiencing abuse and violence on a daily basis were going to school, and they were either the ones acting out and causing trouble, or the quiet ones in the corner not saying anything. So the acting out ones were getting labels like troublemaker, aggressive, whatever, wouldn't amount to anything. And the quiet ones were getting, shy, introvert, and so they were getting these labels. And what do we do when we label something? We normally act up to it. We'll come up to meet our labels. And so children were not only dealing with that at home, they were also looking at adults, society, and getting really angry with us. Because it's like, you don't see me. You don't care about me. You only see me when I'm being bad.
And they had no voice because they weren't allowed to tell anybody.
No voice. No voice.
So in this town, jumping forward now to the present time, do the kids access the services at the Child Advocacy Center and Foundry?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have, thankfully, we have child and youth workers in the shelter. We have our Peace program that works with children in shelter and children who have transitioned out. And we also have our Inside Out program, who Megan is phenomenal, and she goes into schools and works with children within the school system. So we do have those supports for children and youth out with mum support. So we work with the children and mum separately, and then sometimes together as well.
So back to the woman at the shelter. She's been there a few times.
Yes, we're back.
Sorry, I just got a phone call. That was weird. That's the first time that's happened. That threw me off for a second. So a woman's been at a shelter for maybe she's been there 3 times. What are you working on with her then? You and I spoke in our pre-show that there was safety planning and some other things. She obviously evolves through this process. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so again, depending on where she's at, the women, our goal, the women have all the answers. They have all the answers. It's just finding a way to work with them to get to those answers. They know what they need. They know what they deserve. And it's just finding a way to work with them. And everybody's different. Everybody is different. One size will not fit all for this issue. So it really is just asking her, what do you want to focus on? What are your goals while you're here with us? So we do a sort of goal planning as well. What do you need us to focus on first?
So what might be housing or finding a job?
Yeah, it might be housing this time. It might be there's now a custody agreement in place, or he's, partner's lawyered up. So it's like, okay, so what are we focusing on this time? Where do we need to go? What are the goals? What are some of the things you want to achieve while you're with us? What can we support you with? And quite often it's, I just need somewhere safe to be. I need to breathe. I need to think. I need a break.
So I guess that just occurred to me that when you're in that environment and constantly afraid and trying to be ahead, reading the subtle cues and the moods and trying to keep everybody safe, that there's not a lot of capacity or constant focus available to have a plan to end it or get out of it, because you're consumed by it all the time. Absolutely. So that would be the woman who comes in for a break, who wants to try to get some clarity. And
absolutely, just a break. And that's okay. That's okay with women's shelters. If you just need a break. We talk about the cycle of abuse. We talk about the cycle of abuse as being, there's a honeymoon period, and then there's an escalation, and then there's the incident, and then honeymoon period. So women know, they're very
where they are
in that cycle. So she can choose to take a break from that. And that doesn't mean that she's going to stay away. We don't try and convince women not to return to their partner. Right, the very first words out of my mouth were power and control. If women's shelters workers were to insert power and control, we'd be doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're very skilled at not offering solutions or advice. We offer choice.
So you empower them and give them what they need.
Yes.
And help them walk through their plan.
Exactly. So for example, what is going on in the environment right now with COVID-19 is a lot of those custody orders may not be getting followed. And women are really scared to hand the children over. Well, one, because they fear they won't get them back, or they fear that the children are not going to be safe with everything that's going on out in the world right now. So what we would do in that situation is okay, well, let's look at our choices. This is a court order. Yeah. What happens if you choose not to follow it? What happens if you choose to follow it? And we work through those. We will reach out for advice. Okay, well then let's talk to the RCMP. Let's see where their thinking's at right now. What happens if the RCMP show up here because you didn't follow a custody order? So we work through all that. We're not saying you need to send those children or you shouldn't send those children.
Yeah, I get the difference. It's to empower them and navigate it together as opposed to telling them what to do.
Absolutely. And then we support that choice.
Yeah.
We support their decision and their choice. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with it, but we will support it. If we've done the work and we've done our job well, we've worked through all the scenarios, we've empowered her, we've given her the information. She's the best judge of her own safety. She's not been allowed probably to make the most basic of choices for years. So we want to start building that back up and empowering her to make choices, even the slightest little choice about what to make for dinner. It really does that much internal damage to someone's spirit and soul. that women will often stand in the kitchen just lost.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to make a decision about what to make for dinner.
I get it.
Without fear of it getting thrown at them, or their faces rubbed in it, or it really is that damaging to someone's soul.
Yeah. And it'd be very foreign to have any room in your life to be making decisions if you're constantly being told what to do or not to do, or constantly terrified.
Yeah, absolutely.
So right now, are you experiencing higher volumes of COVID at your shelter?
We at the start, when everybody was self-isolating, maybe like 2 weeks ago, we saw a decrease. And my understanding around that, or my explanation for that, is that obviously women are at home, and so they're not safe to call, or it's not safe to go out, and it's not safe because women would often call when partner would go to work, or they would have the freedom to say they were going to a doctor's appointment, or they would have some of that freedom to be able to reach out for support. And what we were finding was that obviously everybody's at home, so that freedom is no longer there. The ability to access the internet, say for example, that's unsafe. To pick up the phone is unsafe. But certainly over the last week, we have done quite a few intakes of new families. We are full. We're always full, but we're full, and the phone has started ringing again. So I think people are starting to reach out for support. But again, it's not safe. It's not safe.
What happens when you're full? Do you guys find somewhere that these women can go for help?
Absolutely. Even if we're full, the BC Housing, who is our main funder, government funder, has arranged for hotel rooms in the town that we can access, and they will cover for women who need to leave an abusive relationship. So we have access to hotel rooms if we're full, and so we do have that ability. And even if women don't want to leave the relationship, and they just want to talk to someone, the 24-hour crisis line, we're staffed 24/7. There's always somebody here. There's always someone that will listen and believe. So
can you give us the number of the crisis line? Do you have it off the top of your head?
I sure can. Not off the top of my head, but I have it here.
We're going to post all these things, but I know some people also might not have the ability to access that if somebody's watching. So yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just checking. It's 250-763-1040. And that is 24, like I say, we're here 24/7. There's always somebody here. Nobody is going to try and convince you to leave your relationship or your home. We just want to be able to listen, tell you you're not alone, that there's people out there that are willing to support you and be there for you, and
they know how to do it, and they have the expertise.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We always tell women that women have been keeping themselves safe in their homes for years.
Since the beginning.
Yes. They've been keeping them and their children safe for years. Mm-hmm. They know how to do it. Yeah. Just because she comes to a women's shelter, she still knows how to do it. It's just more difficult because it's, the way I explain it is it's easy to face the danger when it's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. When you can, look at all the cycle and it's in front of you. It's easy to face that danger when it's in front of you. If you leave, then all of a sudden it's behind you. And you don't know,
you can't regulate it, or
you don't know which way, you don't know which way to dodge when it's behind you. Mm-hmm. So women know how to keep themselves safe. And if a woman says, the safest thing for me to do right now is to go home, then we say, okay, let's safety plan around this.
Okay, so why don't we talk about safety planning as our last point today? What is a safety plan?
The safety plan is an individual plan that we do with every woman. There's no, it's different for everyone. So, for example, that would be if you need to return, what are you going to do to stay safe? Do you need do we need to give you a list of phone numbers? Where, if I give you phone numbers, where can you safely store them? Is there someone you can call? Is there a code word you can text to someone so they know that this is serious? So all those things, depending on what her need is, depending on where she is on the cycle as well. I mean, the first stage normally of a safety plan is get all of your documentation together.
Yep.
And out of the house. Get all your family photographs, get all the things that are dear to you, and get them somewhere safe. So depending again on the journey will depend on the safety plan. And that awareness is key. So giving her the awareness and the knowledge of, okay, so you've left numerous times. We're getting to that point where we really need to be vigilant around your safety, because he's losing control of you.
And that's when it gets its worst.
And that's the risk. So we make women very aware of that. We don't keep this knowledge to ourselves. We share that with them. And that's not to scare anybody. That's the reality of what they're going to have to face. And it's easier to face it and make those decisions when you have the information. So we share that with women. We share other women's experiences of what they went through. And
so they know they're not alone and they can do it.
They know they're not alone. You feel alone. Mm-hmm. You feel alone, and there's nobody out there to help you. It's like you're invisible. Women have described it as being invisible. They don't exist in normal people's worlds. They walk around supermarkets. People see them, but they don't know. They go to the friends' houses. They see them, but they don't know. So it's like they're invisible in their own lives. Mm-hmm. They exist, but they don't. And I can't even begin to understand what that could possibly feel like.
And how that would impact you and how you think and
how you view the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how you view the world. I mean, a lot of women who are experiencing labels are labeled as alcoholics, drug users, mental health. They get labeled all sorts of things. They get named by their diagnosis. Yeah. But nobody looks beyond that at the trauma. Mm-hmm. Oh well, she's crazy because she's got bipolar, or she's this, that, and it's trauma. Mm-hmm. It's trauma from abuse and violence or sexual assault as a child or as an adult. But we want to keep it simple. It's easy to say to someone, oh, you're that way because of a mental health issue, or you're that way because of addiction. We seem to be better as a society of dealing with that, of rationalizing that in our own heads. But all of a sudden, if you say this woman's partner is abusing her because he feels entitled to, that his core beliefs and values tell him that he is allowed to treat her that way, people go, oh, no, people don't do that. No, it's not the 14th century. People still don't act that way. Yes, they do. But it's easier to think, oh, well, it's a drug issue. Yeah. It's a childhood.
I'm going to have to cut it short just because the show's timing out on us. I wanted to leave everybody with the last point was that at the end of the day, and this is mostly what we talked about last time, is that this is always a conversation about women and what they should or shouldn't do, and not about the fact that the perpetrator's doing it. And this is really all about that person not doing it. And that's what the discussion should be about. So
absolutely.
Maybe we'll have you come back and talk about that.
Yes, I would love to come back and talk about that, because I think that's, again, that blame and that accountability. That accountability needs to be put on the perpetrators of abuse and violence. We shouldn't be asking women to solve this. Abuse is not a problem the woman can fix, only the abuser.
That's right. Well, thank you, Allison. That was incredibly powerful and informative. You can learn more about what Allison and her team does at kelownawomensshelter.ca. And there's also lots of resources that they have for people in crisis or not in crisis if they just need to learn more. And regardless of where you are on your journey, reach out to them. Stay tuned to Third Space Charity's website, Facebook, and Instagram for upcoming shows and more information. And we'll be posting this show on YouTube soon with some resources. And keep the feedback coming so we can continue to give you shows that are meaningful and helpful to you. So thank you so much, Allison, and thanks.
Well, thank you. My
thanks
pleasure.
to everybody.
I'll talk to you soon.
Have a great day.
Bye. Bye.